Hello and welcome back to another episode of Life Uncovered. We are joined here today on the podcast by James Wilson. Introduce yourself, James. Who are you? I've just said who you are.
Well, I'm James Wilson. I am a pastor. I work in a church in Waldenfield.
Yeah.
I'm married, dad of two.
Born in Suffolk, born and bred?
Yeah. Born in Ipswich Hospital. Grew up in and around Battersford, Stowmarket sort of area.
Cool.
Some people would say I never really grew up, but yeah, I'm working on that.
And it's not rude to ask a man their age, so...
47.
47.
Yeah,
That's
hard
good.
to believe. I know your viewers will be shocked.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just
Not in his 20s? No.
47.
That's right. Yeah. It's funny. When I was, I think probably in my early 30s, I just thought, oh man, I'm so old. And now I'm 2.5 years off 50. It's just, it goes really quickly.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Before we dive into a little bit more about your life and how you became a Christian, etc., what we do on the podcast,
Yeah.
I'm just going to get some quick fire questions going, just so
Great.
we can understand you a little bit more, maybe in a in a bit of a weird way. These are the quick fire ones. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So, would you rather be the smartest person in the world or the richest person in the world?
Smartest.
Smartest person.
100%.
Yeah. Because then you would be the richest.
Yeah, you would. Yeah.
Would you rather save 100 strangers or one loved one?
100 strangers.
Why?
Because there's more of them. I think because as a Christian, we're called to love one another, and it's easy to love those who love us back. I think the challenge, the Christian challenge, is always to love other people who aren't so easy to love, or who we don't know. So yeah, I guess in my heart, I'd probably want to save my loved one, but the right thing to do would be to. Yeah, that was my Sunday school answer, the 100.
Yeah. Right. Would you rather see the future or change the past?
Change the past.
Change the past.
I would not want to see the future.
Yeah.
I know the future. I know my future.
Yeah.
But I'd like to change the past because I made a lot of mistakes.
Sight or sound? Would you rather lose your sight or lose your sound? We'll go for that.
I'd rather lose my sound.
Sound.
Hear it. Do you mean hearing?
Yeah, that's it. Hearing. I've just copied and pasted on
Or,
the internet.
or do you mean I'm going to become mute?
We'll change
Yeah.
it. Would you rather become mute
Ooh.
or blind?
Yeah, still the same.
Still the
I
same.
wouldn't want to lose my sight because I think, if you can't see, you're just plunged into a world of darkness, which has got to be tough, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Last two of these quick fire ones.
Okay.
Would you rather have logic or emotion? You've got to lose one of them.
So I could be emotionally chaotic and completely illogical, or heartless and logical.
Yeah,
I think I'd rather have emotion.
emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would too.
Yeah.
Because then you're just a bit empty, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd just be a lovely person, but you wouldn't have a clue about anything, would you?
I've met a few people like that.
Yeah, same.
Then these are the normal ones.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Five normal ones.
Yeah.
If you could teach a class one thing, like a class of kids, there they are, and you could teach them one thing, what would you teach them? Apart from the obvious, because you are a pastor of a church.
Yeah.
So let's
I
remove that.
would teach them to value every moment because life is short.
That's probably the best answer so far. I like that.
Right.
That's really good. If you could combine two, this is the weirdest question.
Okay.
If you could combine two animals and be that animal, what would they be and why?
I thought the weird questions were over.
That is the weirdest
Two animals combined, what
Yeah.
would they be? Okay, so I know exactly what they would be, actually, which is even weirder, isn't it?
It's a bit weird.
Be a lion and an eagle.
Yeah.
A lion because they're bold and fierce and biblical. And an eagle because just the idea of soaring in the sky and getting a better perspective, is a cool thing.
You imagine looking up and seeing a lion with wings.
Yeah,
and an eagle head.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool,
That
wouldn't
would
it?
freak me out. Yeah, definitely. I'd get my phone out and then run to the car.
Oh, that'd be incredible. Last three. Do you have any pet peeves?
I think what really annoys me, I think I'm quite a patient person. I think when people are inconsiderate, generally inconsiderate, that really winds me up.
Mm-hmm.
People deliberately driving at like 20 miles an hour and a 30 limit winds me up quite a lot. And it's hard to remember I'm a Christian in those moments.
You know what's worse than someone driving 20 and a 30?
Driving 10.
Someone driving 40 and a 30 and then 40 and a 60. So, like, you're
There's
catching
no
up
sense.
to them to overtake them on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
60, and then it gets to a 30 and then they get away.
Yeah. There's no sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
No.
Most embarrassing or memorable moment? One or the other.
Well, probably, I mean, there's been a lot because I'm just one of those people, I think. I remember when I first became a Christian, before I became a Christian, I'll give you two, okay?
Yeah.
Before I became a Christian, I was at someone's wedding, one of my best friend's weddings, and it got to the point in the service where they went forward. It was a C of E wedding, church full. They went forward for communion, and I didn't realise that it was just the bride and the groom that were supposed to go forward for communion. So they went forward and knelt on this cushion for communion. So did I.
Oh, wow.
And I was knelt beside them, and then it suddenly realised nobody else was. And I don't remember whether it was the minister or my friend who just said, "You're not meant to be here." And so I quickly went back. And then the other time,
I'd pay to see that.
it was bad. It was bad. I mean, there's so many. There was a time when I went bowling with my friends, and we were like, everyone rushed off to get back to where we were going, to someone's house. And I thought, I didn't know the way, so I followed my friend's car. But then it started going in like a really odd, into this housing estate. I was like, this is weird. Where are we going? And it got faster, and so I tried to keep up, and it got faster, and I got faster, and eventually the car stops, and I pulled beside. I was like, what on earth are you doing? And as I said the words, the window wound down, and it was a car full of blokes who I'd never seen in my whole life. Who clearly thought
you were following.
Yeah. So I quickly got out of there before I got into trouble. Yeah. So that's probably it. Yeah. I mean, there have been so many.
Right. Let's dive into your life. So can you paint us a picture of your upbringing, what your family life was like? So give us a little idea of that at a young age.
Okay, so I grew up in Needham Market.
Mm-hmm.
Mum and dad, fairly normal life. My dad is a professional photographer, although I don't know if he still is, because we don't have a lot of contact. Well, we don't have any contact.
Mm-hmm.
At around about 4 years old, my parents divorced. I've got vague memories of it. My dad always had a bit of a temper, and so he would take that out. Not so much on me, but on my brothers. So I've got 3 brothers. 2 of them older, 1 younger. And I think I never really got to the bottom of why that divorce happened, but I think there are other things as well. Like, I don't know whether there were affairs involved. So, like, when you're 4, you don't really know too much about what's going on. And so, yeah, they divorced, which was quite a traumatic time for our family.
Mm.
We then moved to a little bungalow in Bucklesham, near to Battersford, Rinkshaw, a place called Rinkshaw. And we lived there for probably a couple of years. My mum married again. So almost straight away she remarried, and there was this other guy on the scene. I went to two of my mum's weddings
Mm-hmm.
and one of my dad's, which I don't think many people can say.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a tough time. The first time, I think when you're young, you don't realize too much.
Mm.
But there was a big change. I mean, you go from having your dad around every day to we only saw him on a Sunday once every 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
which messes you up. I mean, you can't go through that as a child and not be affected by it. And so, growing up with a stepdad was okay. That was good. He was a nice guy.
Mm.
He still was quite severe by today's standards.
Mm-hmm.
So, we got the slipper if we did something wrong. But generally, I think I was just really thankful to have a father figure around.
Yeah. Mm. And looking back now, because obviously when you were 4 years old, you don't really think about that much, and through your adolescent years, you don't really think about it. Looking back now, how did that situation impact your self-image? How did you sort of look at yourself? And looking back now, how did you sort of view yourself as a young person, as a child?
I think it does make you feel a little bit rejected. I think it makes you question, well, what is it about me or my brothers that someone who is either, someone like your dad or even your stepdad would just be able to so easily walk away. I think that's, even when my stepdad left, at like 14, 15, I wasn't really in a position to ask him why. I mean, it literally was arguments for a year, crying, my mum crying, and just this terrible period. And then one day I remember him coming into the house and I didn't see him. My mum was like, go to your room. So we went to our rooms, and then he literally came to the house, took everything that he owned. We had a barometer on the wall downstairs, just took it off the wall and left and never saw him again. And I think, that is dramatic. So it's hard to make sense of that. And I do think, obviously now as an adult, I kind of think, well, yeah, I mean, it probably wasn't us, and it most certainly was more likely a difficult marriage, but you're still involved in it, and I think that still cuts quite deep, and has a knock-on effect to your relationships, to your confidence, to at school. I'd go to school, and there weren't many kids back then who didn't have two parents, so it was hard to visit friends' houses and see like happy families, and like it didn't really make sense to me because we didn't have that.
So what was your sort of experience like with the Christian faith at this point? You've mentioned to me that you didn't know anything about the Christian faith. So how did that sort of, when did that come into your life?
So yeah, I think so as a knock-on effect of my mum being a single parent, although I'm not sure if it started before that, we would be dropped off at a Saturday school. And I think my mum, or maybe actually at the time my stepdad was still around, they'd go off and, I don't know, like live their best life. And we would be stuck at this village hall doing Saturday school. In all honesty, I don't remember anything really about that other than sticking a candle in an orange during some kind of, I think it must have been Easter or Christmas. It would have been Christmas thing. Yeah. Christingle, isn't it? So yeah, other than that, I don't have any strong recollections of anything at all when it comes to to Christianity, and
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't have any. I literally lived until I was the age of 16, and I knew nothing about Jesus.
Mm.
I knew nothing about the gospel. I knew nothing at all. Literally blank canvas. Like just happily going through life thinking, I believed in God,
Yeah.
but that was it. That was where it ended.
Mm.
And I didn't really, it's easy to say you believe in God, but I didn't have an awareness of what even that meant.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, well, yeah, God exists. Great. Move on.
Yeah, just get on with life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when were you sort of introduced to, Jesus? When were you introduced to the Christian faith growing up? And what impact did that have on you at that point?
So that was my friend Sherry, one of my oldest friends, who is still a dear friend. American, crazy, just I'd never met anyone like her or her mum. She was a single mum at the time, 2 young children, 2 and 4, I think. And they moved, they did a council house swap. They lived in Starpland. They did a council house swap to a house in Battersford. And yeah, the day that they moved in, I happened to be on my driveway, being nosy, to be honest. And I saw Sherry walking down the drive with all this stuff, and she dropped a load of stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go help, And so I went over, and what she dropped was American money. I was like, this is weird. And then she started talking. I was like, oh, you're American. Okay, that makes sense. And then our mum came down the drive. I was like, oh, you're both American. So I befriended them quite quickly. They were always very warm and inviting, and introduced me to some real strange food, Kool-Aid. Don't know if you've ever had that. It's just like sugar on steroids. But they were overtly passionate for the gospel. Like they unashamed of talking about Jesus, unashamed of living for Jesus. And I'd never met a normal Christian, like a nominal socks and sandal wearing Christian, I let alone a full on fire for Christ, filled with the Holy Spirit, American Pentecostal. Well, it's not too Pentecostal,
but
out
like,
there, yeah. And so that was like a hurricane. That was such a massive thing to be confronted with that just had never, ever been on the radar of my life. And so they would talk about Jesus, and, I'd nod along and sort of say, well, that's great for you. But there were some incredible moments before I became a Christian that made it undeniable, that made the reality of God undeniable. So there was a time when I was talking to Sherry, and I'm not even sure if I've ever shared this with her. So Sherry, if you're watching, this was a big deal, where she was talking about Christ. It was one evening, and as she was talking, it's like I could see her, but it was like it wasn't her. That sounds weird. That sounds a bit weird. But it was just like God was talking through her. And it wasn't an out of body experience, but it was really surreal. And there was another time when they invited me to church, and I reluctantly went. Actually, the first time I found a suit jacket that belonged to somebody much bigger than I was. And I got super nervous. We drove to this church only to discover that it was closed, which wasn't great. But there was another time at Battersford Free Church, which is where I went for a while, that I sat in the church, and it was during a communion service, and it was during a prayer, and we had our eyes closed, and there was just this amazing light, and not just a It's quite, it makes, you're doing that thing, it's making me emotional. It wasn't just an amazing light. It was like, it was the presence of God. It was like, there was this cleansing presence of God, this light. And yeah, I was like, I went away from that service. I didn't tell anyone what had happened, because I didn't really know how to explain it. And even all these years later, I mean, all I can say is it was a move of the Holy Spirit. But it was like an encounter. You know, I talk a lot about when people meet with Christ, an encounter with Jesus. And it's like, that can sound fluffy and not mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, that there have been moments in my Christian life where it's like, I know that, like, I know God is with me all the time. I know he'll never leave me. But there are definitely times when he reveals himself in a much more intimate, powerful way. And they are life-changing. And I think you need them, actually, as you go through your life. You need those moments where you are just broken and completely open for God to move in your life, and listening to what he has to say, and ready for that encounter with him. And when he blesses you with that, it's undeniable. It's unmistakable. And it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, those sort of encounters were, they were quite an important part, I guess, in the journey.
How old were you around this point, and how long between your sort of stepfather leaving to sort of this point of being introduced to the Christian faith by these neighbours? Yeah,
Sherry and her mum moving in, I think, happened when I was around about 16 years old.
Yeah,
15, 16. It must have been around then. Because it was not long after that, probably around about a year, that I ended up going to college. So yeah, it must have been around about the age of 16. So between the ages of 16 and 17, I'm going to church. Not every week, not all the time.
Sporadically.
A lot, though. A whole lot more than I ever did.
Yeah.
Because I never went. So yeah, sort of dipping in and out of church life, and hearing the gospel.
How long was the gap? So the gap between meeting Sherry, going off to church with her, that you could say that you became a Christian, and that you decided to put your faith in Jesus, that you became a follower of Christ. So
it's about a year, I'd say, probably a little bit over.
Yeah.
From first hearing about Christ, and then going to church and hearing the gospel and thinking, yeah, I did enjoy parts of it, but I also didn't think it applied to me, because I was a good person. Like, considering everything that we'd gone through, everything I'd gone through, I wasn't trouble at school. I stayed out of trouble. I wasn't trouble at home. I just wanted to help and support my mum, and so yeah, like I didn't think, when it's such a cliche, as like when you hear about sin, it never really dawned on me that it was about me. What's this got to do with me? You know, sort of and that's the natural response of a sinful, unregenerate heart, is to reject the truth that you really know deep down. Probably, a year went by before the watershed, like, life-changing moment. And for me, it was a moment. I know that's not true for everybody, but for me, it was a moment that changed my life forever.
Tell us about that moment, because I've watched a video from a while ago, and I found it quite funny that you said that you started praying on the toilet.
So go
into that bit.
I did somebody said to me, when you share your testimony, James, please can you not talk about it being in a toilet? And it's like, okay, now I do understand what you're saying. There's probably not huge value in saying that it was in a toilet. I have to sort of I have to start by saying I wasn't on the toilet or going to the toilet. In fact, it's probably a more accurate description to call it a bathroom stroke stock room.
Okay.
So that's where I was, this back room. So I
Sounds like Elvis.
yeah, I didn't die though. I was born.
Yeah.
There you go. I was like the opposite of Elvis. Yeah, there's probably a really catchy alternative to I'm just taking a break. You know, it's that so what the reason I ended up there was obviously going to church for a year, God speaking and challenging me, although I didn't know it. I didn't know it. And at the time I worked at this place called Powerhouse, which some of your listeners, if they're Stowmarket based, might remember, was like an electrical shop quite close to Asda in Stowmarket. And I did not get on with my boss. Like, she was a battle axe of a woman. If you're listening, I'm praying for you. If you're watching this, but she was horrible. She was horrible to me, and I never really understood why, because I was quite young. I wasn't even 18. It was my first job, working in this TV and video shop. It was I liked the job, you know. I liked it because I like people, and I liked just liked earning a little bit of money. It was the first time. Like when you've grown up with nothing, when you've not had money, getting a job is like amazing because you suddenly have money for the first time. And I'd only been there a few months. I just felt like the world was against me. At the time, life was hard and difficult at home because my family thought I'd gone nuts, thought I'd joined a religious cult. Why is he taught? Why is he going to church? Why is he with these Jesus people? And work was just dreadful, and I was just so miserable and so unhappy. And I found myself, I was just like, there was this one day I went in and she was just, this day, I don't know, she must have had a bad day. She was taking it out on me. I was like, do you know what? I don't need this. So I went through to this back room, shut the door, closed the lid on the toilet and sat down and just thought, well, a bit of peace and quiet. What am I going to do? What am I doing with my life? Like, what is the point of it all? And then for some bizarre reason, I thought, well, why don't I pray about it? Why don't I pray? I'll say a prayer. And the only other time I'd ever prayed before that was the day my stepdad came to take everything out of the house. And I remember the council had put in new carpets, and I had a gold coloured carpet. And it was really deep, really comfortable. It was like so luxurious for us. And I shared my bedroom with my younger brother. And I remember laying on the carpet with my ear to the ground, trying to hear the muffled argument downstairs and praying. And I don't remember that prayer. It would have been something like, "Dear God, if you're there, please stop this." And that's the only time I'd ever reached out to God. And so there I was in this room, just feeling really empty and unhappy. And I thought, well, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go. And so I closed my eyes and I started praying, and initially it felt pointless and a bit silly. And, dear God, if you're up there, if you're real, classic prayer, really, make everything in my life right. please will you sort this job out? The intention of me going in there was never to do what actually ended up happening. Because as I was talking to God who might be there, I was just suddenly aware that I absolutely knew and believed and felt God's presence that he was there. Mm. And when you go from talking to yourself, well, thinking that you're talking to yourself and hoping that there's a God, to then realizing that you are actually talking to God and he is actually the maker of all things and he is actually holy, and you are actually sinful and it does actually matter, then all of a sudden the words that you end up saying completely change. And when you look into the Bible and you see all of the people that Jesus met with who, when they realized he was God, just fell to the ground or, shouted out, "Depart from me, for I'm a sinful man, and you're God." For me, that's what it was like. And so I ended up moving from, "Lord, please will you sort my work situation out, Lord, if you're there," to, "Well, actually, I need you to sort out my whole life. I know I'm sinful. I know I'm not good. And I need you to move in my life, and I need you to change things and do what needs to be done." And when you're not a Christian, you don't really know what to say to God. I know there's that expectation that people are like, "Well, did you repent of your sins? Did you?" It's like, well, no, I did, but I can't say I used those words. What I can say is, as soon as I finished praying, there was a massive part of me that was relieved. And there was a massive part of me that was like, what's just happened? And the next day, I got fired. Literally, the very next day, I came into work and my boss said, "You're gone." And I remember sitting on the steps. And here's how I knew that... Sorry. Here's how I knew that my whole life had changed. Because I literally, the first place I went to was God. Yeah. And I was like, "What are you doing?" What are you doing? Like, I thought you were meant to sort things out and make things good. And now I've got nothing. And of course, I didn't realize, but he'd given me everything. And actually, what I'd lost was a really thing that had no value at all. And I'd gained forgiveness and eternal life, and it was actually the best thing that could happen to me, obviously, and it just transformed everything. It was a few weeks later that in the church in Battersford that somebody, good friend of mine, Dan, who'd had a terrible accident, he got hit by a car on his bike, ended up in hospital, pins all throughout one of his legs, he almost died. And he recovered really slowly, and obviously, and he came to church and he was like, "I've given my heart to Christ and I need to get baptized." And during that service, I sat there and I thought, well, that's what's happened to me. And I've never told anyone. I've not told a single person. And so on the way out, I said to my friend, I said to Sherry, I was like, I've become a Christian. And I said to the pastor, I was like, "I've become a Christian. And it was a year later, actually, that I got baptized. And it's always one of my biggest regrets that I left it so long, because it's so dumb. I just kept thinking, I'm not a good enough person. I'm not a good enough Christian. I'm not a good enough example. I'm still battling with sin and temptation and all the other stuff that doesn't actually leave you as you go through life. And eventually, I was baptized. One of the most profound things is that I know that, going back to the how did you feel when I was younger and having to go through divorce, feeling rejected through really probably something that was no fault of my own, but feeling like it was. When you're accepted by God, knowing that He knows everything, that is just unbelievable. I mean, that's breathtaking grace, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
To be able to say, do you know what? He knows everything. There's nothing hidden from Him, and yet He still loves me, and He wants me.
What piece of advice would you give to someone who may have a similar upbringing to you? Maybe listened to the podcast, stumbled across it.
Yeah.
What piece of advice would you give to them if they're searching for meaning and purpose, and maybe they've started to explore the Christian faith, or maybe this is their introduction to Christ? What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I would say your identity doesn't have to be rooted in what's happened to you. You don't have to be a victim of your upbringing. You might be skeptical about hope, but there's always hope.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to knowing true, lasting hope, the only place you'll ever find it is with God. That's the only place you'll find it. And my advice would be, seek Him. Because the Bible promises if you seek God with all your heart, you'll find Him. And most of the people that I speak to as a pastor, they've never done that. They'll often go, well, I don't know, I don't believe what you believe. And, I don't understand why you have faith, and I could never have that. And it's like, well, actually, no, God makes a promise. God says, if you seek me with all your heart, you'll find me. And that's what I did. And that's what happened. And every single Christian believer that I know at some point has sought God and found them. So if you want your life to change in a way that's meaningful and radical, if you want peace and joy, then you're never going to find that in an earthly relationship. Even if you hadn't gone through what you've gone through in a broken upbringing, you still wouldn't be happy. Mm-hmm. You still wouldn't be content, because none of those things fill in the gap that God should reside in. And actually knowing Him is to know purpose and love and joy in life. And nothing else can take that place.
Amazing answer. Last question, right? I've introduced something to this. Now you are getting spoiled today.
Okay.
Different questions.
Right, yeah.
And introducing a new thing. So do you know, have you ever watched The Diary of a CEO or listened to him?
Yes.
Stephen Bartlett.
Yes. Yeah,
so
the guy who's been sued for loads of things.
Yeah. Good. Yep.
Good guy though. He's
good guy.
Yeah. I like watching him on.
Very
Dragon's
clever.
Den.
Very clever man.
Very clever.
Obviously not clever enough because he's been sued.
No.
But yeah, he does a thing at the end of his podcast where he asks the guests to ask a question for the next person. I'm not doing that.
Okay.
But I've got a different idea. Inspired by a guy who comes to the Monday Night Football thing that I do.
Yeah.
He has asked AI to ask loads of questions that he then grills me and Jimmy with at the end or the beginning of the football session.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask AI to ask my guest a question based on their faith. And this was the question that ChatGPT asked.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
How do you stay grounded in your faith during times of struggle?
By remembering that God is in control, that His promises never fail, and that He never changes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice one. Well, thank you, James.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for opening up and sharing about your faith.
If you don't open up, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know, I think it's Christianity is not a life choice. It's a life change. And I think if you're not viewing it like that, you haven't experienced an encounter with Jesus. So yeah, it's always going to be emotional and moving, I think, if it's really happened.
Well, thank you. If you've listened to the podcast and you've enjoyed it, leave it a like rating. If you've got any questions, drop a comment in or thoughts on the Instagram or whatever. But yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you, James, for your time.
Thank you.